Welcome to Tea Time on Tatooine, and Happy New Year. It is 2025. It is a new year. We are starting off the new year with only 2 episodes left of Skeleton Crew to go. I hate these 8-episode seasons of things. It's just so dumb. I miss long seasons where you have more time for storylines to percolate and mature, and shows that get canceled after one season actually still get a chance to go somewhere in that one season. But anyway, this last episode, Zero Friends Again. It was great, but I guess we should just get into it. I also do want to say, unfortunately, we do not have a music segment this week because Ashton is still very, very sick. So, of course, we wish him and his family a speedy recovery. And I will try to stumble through some of my musical observations on my own. And next week he can come and explain them with a little more expertise and detail. All right. So from the recap prior to the episode, we know that there are a few things that are going to be addressed. Number one, they go back to when they were running around the spot and KB is concerned about steam corrosion. And Fern seems to brush that off like, you'll be fine. It's not a big deal. So we know something's going to happen there. In the recap, we also do get a reminder of SM33's warning to never, ever, 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 ever press the button for the emergency hull demolition sequencer. So obviously that button is going to be pressed in this episode, which is exciting. But right away, just from the recap, I get a sense that this is going to be more of a KB-focused episode, which is great. It's something that I've been hoping for a while. And where we left off at the end of the last episode, Wim had triggered a trapdoor for the kids to fall through to an unknown fate. Sure enough, we open the episode with that fate becoming less unknown. We see them zooming down underground slides. And at this moment, both my husband and I were like, this is almost too Goonies. I mean, it's great. I love it. I'm still not angry about it. It's tipping its hat to Goonies, like almost too much, but it's still okay. That sequence wasn't terribly long, so I think it was fine, but it was maybe showing its hand a little bit. Like, we get it. This is nostalgic. It's Goonies in space. At any rate, we're out of the slides fairly quickly, and the kids are dumped in what appears to be kind of a wasteland junk repository for garbage that has been thrown away by the spa and resort portion of London. It's clear right away that there's something wrong with KB. They talk about her ox going bad. I wasn't sure what that was, so I looked it up, and I think it could be one of two things, or maybe possibly a combination of both. The first one is a reference to Star Wars: The Old Republic, and that's to augments. And augments are a crafted item that allow you to add stats to your armor in the game. So augmentation, mechanical augmentation, okay, that makes sense. So like her different augmentations might be going bad. So then she and Fern very quickly are talking about something that has to do with the occipital lobe, which is part of the brain that processes visual information like color, form, and motion. But I think more relevant to the situation is the location of the occipital lobe, which is kind of near the base of the skull on the back of the head. So as far as what this means for KB, I think it might be a combination of both. Like, it's part of her mechanical augmentation, but it also happens to be located by the occipital lobe. So occipital, I'm not entirely sure. I don't think it really necessarily matters. I don't think I need further explanation on it because those two different things can kind of give enough context to understand what it is that means and why it's important. So anyway, those seem to be at risk in some form or fashion. The fear of corrosion from steam proves to be a founded one. And she very quickly gets frustrated with Fern. She kind of accuses her of being bossy to the point of being closed-minded to anyone else's ideas outside of her own. Fern doesn't know where this is coming from. She feels kind of attacked. Understandably, KB is not really good at explaining why she is having this outburst, nor is she comfortable explaining why it is that she does not want to climb up to their ship. Wim sees these little crab-like creatures that he thinks they could maybe follow to find someone that they can ask for help. Fern wants to climb. KB wants to go with Wim, much to Fern's dismay. Neil ends up going with Fern. Don't necessarily think because he agrees with her, although he might, but I think he's more just not wanting her to be alone. At any rate, we get a brief detour from the kids, and we see Jod captured again by the pirates. I do want to quickly point out that Umbarans are so fucking cool. That was my thought last week when we see Pocket, Jod's former colleague, I guess, or partner, or someone that he screwed over along the way. But she just looks really cool. And after reading The High Republic and reading about Orla Jareni and seeing her in different comics and illustrated fashions, it's very cool to see an Umbaran in live action. Because they just look really cool and intimidating and scary in a really fun and mysterious way. There is also I know I've talked about wanting to see Hondo in this show. I don't think it's going to happen. We saw his ship in the pirate port. And then we do see another Wike. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but it is a species that Hondo belongs to. We see another pirate of that group. And Hondo's pirate crew, at least during the Clone Wars, is made up mostly pirates within his own species. So there's a very good chance that this pirate in particular was part of Hondo's crew at one point or another. So that could be another little small wing. Now we are back to the kids and they've decided to split up. Splitting up is such a bad idea. At the end of the day, it turns out that it's not a terrible idea in this scenario. Everything works out okay. But just as an audience member, you're sitting there like, why on earth would you think this is a good idea? This is a horrible idea. Do not split up. They do anyway. Wim and KB are following these little crabs, one of which is definitely holding a protocol droid's foot. That is clearly a C-3PO foot, which is just a fun observation. That doesn't mean anything, but this show is so full of those little details that are like, oh, that's so cool. And it's fun because a deeper fan who maybe has seen everything is going to have a really fun time noticing all these little Easter eggs and details that remind you of different things. But it's also a true standalone show, at least so far. We'll see what happens with the last 2 episodes. But it's something that I've told a lot of people in my life that are kind of overwhelmed by getting into the Star Wars shows. I've explained to them, this is an actual standalone show. You don't need to have seen the other shows. You don't need to watch The Mandalorian and Obi-Wan and Ahsoka and Book of Boba Fett. You can just watch the show and enjoy it as its own unique thing. The only things you really need to know are what the Jedi are and that there was a galactic civil war, basically the events leading up to and including the original trilogy. There was a big war and the Emperor was overthrown. So you know that it's odd that the people on At Attin aren't aware of that conflict. And you understand why Wim and Neil are playing Jedi and why Wim kind of hero worships the Jedi. So the kids split up, and now we're with John as he is receiving sentencing for his crimes against the pirate crew. And they have sentenced him to death by airlock. But as we know, John is a smooth talker. Like every good con artist, he can talk his way out of anything. And this group of pirates don't seem to be the brightest star cluster in the galaxy. They are immediately starting to kind of, well, maybe he's got a point. We are hungry, metaphorically and literally. We do want more. Oh, he's talking about infinite wealth. And all I'm thinking is, don't bring them to At Attin. It's one thing for him to go for his own nefarious purposes, but to bring this group of bloodthirsty pirates to this wonderful, peaceful, sweet, idyllic planet. And yes, we know that there's other stuff going on under the surface. Maybe there are some more malignant, nefarious things going on under the surface, but still, I don't want a band of bloodthirsty pirates coming. Dealing with and kicking out one greedy thief is a lot easier than an entire pirate crew. So that really bummed me out. I did enjoy the pirate song. I am enjoying building up more and more the legend status of both this captain, Tak Renaud, and the ship, the Onyx Cinder, as well as At Attin itself. It's just adding more color and history to this story and makes it more compelling overall. But that song was really creepy. It definitely gave me some goosebumps. I also always enjoy the use of in-universe swear words, so it was nice to see Cripping get another use. They've decided to let John have another chance and lead them to the treasure of At Attin, but they make it very clear in no uncertain terms that should he fail them, they will kick him out of the airlock, and they push his head really hard against the window. So we're back now with the kids. KB is not doing well. It turns out her Augs are super corroded. She is in danger of a full systems failure. And at this point, we are getting a little bit of a different theme. Now, I don't have the mastery of music theory to really understand how the theme is different, other than that it is. I have a good ear. The theme is different. I don't think it's different the same way Neil's was different, where there's the addition of a different musical component, in that case, the major 7. This seemed to be a little different. It's definitely minor. There are some pieces missing from it. If that makes sense. I know Ashton's going to come in and explain this a lot better next week, but I did want to at least touch on it this week, that it does sound different. It sounds a little disjointed and incomplete. When it's hers, there is something different about it. So even if it's not different in the same way that Neil's was different, I do like that so far every kid is kind of getting their own flavor of the theme, which is something that we had kind of predicted in episode 4. Another prediction that seems to have come true is that she was in some sort of horrible accident. I had predicted it was either an accident or some really catastrophic illness, but that there is a reason that she's somewhat cyborg, having droid parts as having replaced her original human parts. It also explains why her moms were so hysterical when we saw all of the parents together talking about how they're going to get their kids. If you almost lose your child in a horrific accident, obviously you're going to be a little extra sensitive to other threats to that child. So we do get confirmation she was in an accident. We don't know exactly what happened. Not that we necessarily need to, but it is a nice moment to acknowledge invisible disabilities, different physical setbacks that other people might not be able to see, and therefore might not be as sympathetic to, unless the person struggling with them can speak up for themselves and explain that this is not something that I can do very well because of XYZ, either unseen physical disability or a mental disability. And KB, by her own admission, had no friends before Fern. She was very lonely and isolated, and then she gets this friend who can do anything. Fern is fearless. She is reckless. She wants to race with those other kids on At Attin. She wants to be the pirate captain. She wants to take charge. She doesn't seem to have a whole lot of patience. And so KB, in her desperate fear of losing that one friend that she has, will do anything to keep that friend, including keeping her own shortcomings private in order to avoid Fern running out of patience with her and maybe moving on to someone that doesn't have those sort of setbacks or disabilities, which is really heartbreaking. Just thinking that this person only wants to be friends with you because you are whole, and this person would no longer want to be friends with you if they found out exactly how much you struggle with XYZ thing that you struggle with. And it seems like perhaps she's so blinded by that fear of losing her friend that she doesn't realize exactly how thoughtful and empathetic Fern could be when pushed to be. And we actually do see this in Fern's interactions with Neil when they are climbing the ladder. She is clearly very frustrated with him for continuing to stop, for slowing them down. She's like, Neil, you can't keep stopping. We have to keep going. And then he speaks up very specifically about why he's having a hard time, why he's stopping. I can't reach between the rungs. I don't have long legs like you do. I can't do this because of this reason. And instead of leaving him behind or making fun of him or even being angry at him, she finds a solution. She uses those incredibly clever problem-solving skills that she has exhibited in earlier episodes to come up with a solution to accommodate Neil's difficulty. She and Neil become a crew of 2 in this mission that they are currently undertaking. And it gave me relief thinking that, okay, if KB can just be honest and speak up about these difficulties she's having, clearly Fern will have the patience and understanding to adjust to that. Because if she can do that for Neil, someone she doesn't have as much history with, someone that she doesn't have an existing friendship with, she can definitely do that for her best friend. So it's clear that KB's own fear of rejection and being alone are clouding her judgment when it comes to how she could be vulnerable with her best friend. At any rate, we get a really sweet moment with KB and Wim where he says, you can just be friends with me and Neil. He and Neil are so open and accepting, and I think it's what KB really needs to hear at that moment. Even though Fern is not going to reject her, we understand that. We know that they're going to have a reconciliation, but I think it's something that gives KB a little more confidence, knowing that she's not going to go back to 0 friends again. Even if Fern does reject her, she has these other people in her life who care about her. They do a good job of MacGyvering a replacement piece for the piece in her head that has corroded in the steam. Wim seems to get it back in just in time to avoid a catastrophic all systems failure, which I guess means death, maybe? But leave it to KB to be a little more scientific about it and like, oh, it's fine. It's no big deal. Everything's good now. We do get a little bit of scary music during that tense period. And then once she's saved and rebooted and everything's good, we get the heroic theme again. So that is a lot of fun. She also says thanks, Jedi, to Wim, which, just absolutely made his day. And I think now we've cemented a secondary level of friendships. We had Fern and KB, and we had Wim and Neil. Those were the units. Those were the teams within the crew. Now we have Wim and KB having their own bonding moment, as well as Fern and Neil having their own bonding moment, where they work together to overcome whatever challenge they happen to be facing at that time. They are starting to become a crew. Fern and Wim have already had a couple of moments where they seem to be getting on the same page, and Neil can kind of get along with anyone, I feel like, so he and KB, I don't think, require their own special bonding moment, because he's just very easy to get along with. The giant daddy crab, all I could think of with this was the Bendu. On Adelon in Rebels that had all these large oversized spider crabs, and then there was a Bendu out in the wilderness that Kanan comes across. This clearly is not that, but it's similar in size and scale. I wondered if that was stop motion. I need to look this up. Okay, holy shit, the giant crab in Star Wars Skeleton Crew episode is a stop motion puppet. The crab, also known as the trash crab or mama crab, sorry, not daddy crab, that's hilarious, was a 14-pound 3D printed puppet created by Phil Tippett and his Tippett Studio team. Amazing. Heaviest stop-motion puppet ever built by Tippett Studio and required a special harness to prevent damage. Well, cool. Yeah, stop-motion daddy/mama crab. Awesome. Very cool. They are able to escape the crab at the last minute with help from Fern and Neil, who kind of commandeer a flying droid thing that is one of many towing their ship to the junkyard. The group is reunited as they are flung to the ground, and they have a group hug that is just absolutely delightful. And I think this episode, while it was short, it was almost too short, I felt like, at least for my preferences. This was the episode that really made them a crew, and we see that in several different moments, this being a really tangible one with their first big group hug. KB and Fern have their reconciliation, where Fern apologizes to her. I think her experience with Neil and being frustrated with him until he overtly, explicitly explained why he was having difficulty, I think that made her stop and think, oh, instead of waiting for someone to tell me what's wrong, I should maybe be a little more aware and sensitive and understand that things that are easy for me might be difficult for someone else without them having to tell me. So she having that realization and KB having the realization that she doesn't need to be afraid to tell Fern when there are things that she can't do is a really nice moment for these kids to come together. Wim is so psyched about creating a new microfuse for her resonator, and the whole experience has been really fun for him. Everyone else seems to be a little traumatized by whatever it was that they just went through. Wim, as always, has very little situational awareness. He's just like, that was so cool. You came and rescued us and we jumped. I did a thing and she almost fell down and blah, blah, blah. So yes, we still love Wim, even if he does have his head in another galaxy. Their ship is taken away. They realize it has not been taken far. It is just down beyond a ridge, and it is in danger of being completely jumped by another crab, just a giant mechanical version this time. So they run to get on the ship in order to try and fly it out of there before things go sideways. So they get onto the ship. We get a little bit of a nod to a moment in episode 2 where SM33 is explaining them how to fly the ship, and he's like, and it's this and that and that and that button and this button does that and that button does that and blah, 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 blah. And then KB says, yeah, makes perfect sense. And that is a nice little tie-in, because I think without that, a lot of people would go, well, how could they figure out how to fly a ship? They're a bunch of kids without experience. And yes, that's true, but I think because of the different droid cyborg augmentation that she has a photographic memory. She is able to recall the instructions that SM33 gives when telling them how to fly the ship. She has the coordinates to At Attin in her memory banks. So really her greatest weakness, this thing that keeps her from being able to do certain things, is also her greatest strength. And I think that is another thing that she is probably able to walk away from this experience with. is learning to embrace these things that make her different and might make things a little bit harder for her. This is where we really see them become a crew as a unit of 4. The group hug is really sweet and everything, but now they all have a job to do and they are all doing it. Neil is flying the ship. He did it before, he can do it again. Fern is calling the shots. KB is on technician duty, I guess. She's working buttons and doing levers and stuff like that. Wim is in the turret. They are working as a unit. They are communicating. They are making decisions together. They are a true crew. This is so fun. This was a really excellent moment for me and led us into a really fucking cool ship reveal. Just as the recap implied, we did get to see the hull demolition sequence take place. I was not sure what that was going to entail, if it was just like explosions meant to get off vulture droids or buzz droids or kind of things of that sort. And maybe that's what it was originally built for, but I did not expect like a Russian doll ship to come out of the larger ship. It was like a snake shedding its skin and becoming something sleeker and more aerodynamic. Very cool. I really hope that they make a Lego version of that with like a skin that the smaller ship can slide out and go back into. The Onyx Cinder man, so cool. Even during all of this crew stuff, when Wim is in the turret and he's firing on the big mechanical crab and he says, "It's too invincible." Like, he's still playing games in his mind. It's such a, maybe it's a defense mechanism, because if he let himself be more serious, he would be terrified and understand like the absolute peril that they are. At any rate, this was a great episode. Like I said, a little shorter than I wanted it to be, but fun nonetheless. Bryce Dallas Howard directed. She's really good with a lot of complex action scenes. Like the first thing she ever did was that episode of The Mandalorian where she had the AT-STs in a nighttime water battle sequence, which I think no one told her how difficult that was going to be to direct. So she went in like, yeah, sure, I can do this. And she fucking nailed it. So this also had some complex action sequences with Fern and Neil jumping onto the flying tow cable droid things. I'm not even explaining it well, but she did a really good job with the complex action components of the episode. And I really think she got the most out of all of these kids with some like surprisingly dramatic and emotional scenes that required a lot of subtlety. And I think that the kids absolutely nailed it, especially Kiriana Crater. Don't know if I'm saying her name right, but Kiriana, the girl who plays KB, I think was a real standout this episode. Luckily, because it would have been unfortunate had that performance not been a standout this week. But I really liked this episode. I liked it a lot. I think a lot of really cool stuff happened. I think we got some much needed insight into KB's character, why she is the way she is. Answered my question that I had burning in my mind from day one, which is exactly how much of a cyborg is she? Turns out in some pretty significant ways, and that it was because she was in some sort of horrible accident when she was young. We get some character development from Fern. We have some nice moments with Wim and Neil. We get the setup of now the entire bloodthirsty pirate crew is going to be heading to At Attin. That makes me super nervous. We get the moment of full cohesion of the skeleton crew into an actual crew that works together. And now the kids are also on At Attin. So John and the pirates have the coordinates and are on their way. KB and the kids have the coordinates and are on their way. They are converging on At Attin, where all three groups, the pirates, the kids, and the parents, will likely reunite in the next episode. So I'm very excited. This did set a lot of stuff up, but at the same time, it wasn't filler. It had a lot of development going on in the episode itself. So overall, very well done. Really enjoyed it. Can't wait for next week, where we will hopefully have the return of our musical breakdowns for episode 7, the second to last episode. Oh my gosh, this went by way too fast. But anyway, have a happy new year and may the force be with you.